Hi, I'm Barry Feldman from Feldman Creative, and you are listening to the Social Media Talks podcast with Alan Hennessy from compassmedia.ie.
Welcome to Social Media Talks podcasts, brought to you by compassmedia.ie.
Hello and thank you for joining me. This is the Social Media Talks podcast brought to you by compassmedia.ie, episode number 40. I'm your host, Alan Hennessy, and this is the podcast to help business owners who want to learn more about social media marketing. And if you'd like to listen to any of our previous podcasts, you can log on to our website at compassmedia.ie/social media talks. You can also join our Facebook group by logging on to facebook.com/groups/social media talks. And we are looking forward to today's show. Today we're going to be talking all about content marketing. And I'm going to be joined today by Barry Feldman. And Barry is the author of Road to Recognition. Barry also operates Feldman Creative and provides content marketing consulting, copywriting and creative direction services. He contributes to many of the web's top marketing sites and was named as one of the top 25 social media marketing experts you need to know by LinkedIn. If you would like a piece of his mind, why not visit his blog called The Point. So without further ado, I think we will transition straight over to the interview with Barry. Hi Barry, how are you? Thanks for joining us today on the Social Media Talks podcast.
I am lovely, as they would say over there in the aisles. Thanks for having me, Alan.
For anyone who doesn't know, we've given you a brief introduction at the start of the show, so you might just give us a little bit of a brief background on yourself before we get stuck into our chosen topic today, which is content marketing and all good things about it, because if there's a man that knows about content marketing, it's Barry. So Barry, you might tell us a little bit about your background before.
All right, I'll try not to be long-winded or boring, but my career has taken me to content marketing. I began decades ago in the agency business, long before there was, or at least a little before there was such a thing as digital marketing. And I started a solo freelance career in 1995. Right about the time of the advent of the web and the many things that that are digital marketing that came to pass soon after, in the 2000s. And for the last, I suppose, 8 or 9 years, I've been heavily into helping people with their content marketing in terms of strategy. And I suppose, unlike most consultants, also execution. I'm a writer. I always have been. And so I write constantly for just about every client in the realm of content marketing. It's not, my work includes helping people with their websites and conversion and so forth. But, content's kind of the driver of the many things I do.
Of course, it really is. And as you I've heard you talk on other podcasts and other webinars, and you were one of the ones that was there when Alta Vista and the infancy of, I suppose, social media and digital, I suppose, is where it was back then. But it's come on so far, and it's amazing, to see what has happened over the last couple of years and the way it has just gone from leaps and bounds. It's just craziness.
Yeah. Now we talk about blockchains and artificial intelligence and journey analytics. I think it was just yesterday or the day before where I wrote as a infographic a digital marketing glossary. So yeah, the times they are changing fast. You mentioned Alta Vista, and I suppose there's people younger than you and I listening that would have no idea what you're talking about. But to save them the trip to Google, it was one of the earlier and one of the better search engines. But I think it preceded Google, and it might have even been purchased by Google.
Yeah, and I think it was actually. Now just say that, but it's amazing. And what we're here to talk about today really is all about content marketing, and I know that it is we will not get through it in one podcast. There's no doubt about it, because there's so much to talk about when it comes to content marketing. But I suppose really the question I would ask is if someone is starting out and they're starting to look at the content marketing, where is probably the best places to start out? What should they be looking for? What should they be doing? So you might give us a little bit of an idea on where they should be.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have to go anywhere to find content. Content comes to you in the paths you travel on media, not just online and off, but largely the explosion of content marketing as a conversation, as a marketing tactic is the result of the explosion of the web and our, propensity to be connected all the time. And so, to start off with, though, it might be kind of tiresome to those who have paid close attention to the proliferation of content marketing. You basically, the goal is to create media people want to consume, as opposed to what we did in the advertising focused days, where we created media that basically interrupted the media that you were trying to consume, right? Best example being a television commercial. You weren't exactly asking for that, and ads were not the reason why you would buy a print magazine. And so today we take control of the media as consumers, and we research things, and we go to our phones, tablets, and computers, and I suppose you can really talk about any connected device now in that conversation. We go to them for entertainment, and we go to them for education, and we go to them for inspiration, and we are going to discover somebody's content, and unlike before, it's not always from big media companies or from those that would call themselves publishers. It's from brands, right? If you're reading about colleges to send your kid to, the content might come from advisors in that field, or it might come from the colleges themselves. If you're reading about cooking, you wouldn't have to depend or watching something about cooking on a Julia Child's program or what have you.
You can source it you can source it nearly everywhere, whatever you want. And I think that's the beauty of the age in which we live in now, is that it is so freely available, and it's really a case of, as you say, the consumer's choice now to actually be able to go and pick what content they want. And as a business, I suppose it's being able to understand what it is that person is actually looking for, that your customer is actually looking for, and how we should go about doing that. I know you've wrote and you've blogged many times about lead magnets as opposed to when it comes to actually getting content out there. So you might talk a little bit about the lead magnets and how that can actually work, and how it can benefit you as a business owner or as a marketer to promote your business.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to do that, and I might have to preface that with actually answering your previous question. Your previous question about where to get started, because I'm not going to say don't get started with blogging, but I am going to talk about lead magnets next, and in relationship to blogging and other content formats. Okay, so you want to be a media maker as a brand, which we've just discussed. So you need to owe up to the fact that I am going to create quality content that people want, things that help entertain, inspire, and educate them. Typically, there's an element of problem solving in them, right? When somebody speaks to their device, Alexa, show me this, or types something into their keyboard, or taps on their phone, they want to know something, and you can couch that as a problem for which they are hunting for a solution, and you want to become in that path. And so, 20 years ago or so, along came blogging, the smashing together of the two words web logging and web logging became blogging. And while, a lot of people thought of that as journaling, a lot of opinion stuff and personal stuff, it became a business tactic, and it became really the cornerstone for nearly every company that, becomes new to content marketing. It's easy to get the publishing tools, which are largely, content management systems such as WordPress. And while it's not easy to become a great content creator, nothing's really stopping you And now you are a media. Now you have an outlet, otherwise known as your domain, and you can publish. And so a lot of the great marketers today that have great blogs took an early lead when it became a business building tactic. Not everybody that does it now will give you a thumbs up on how it's going. You know, they don't always lead to happy endings because there is far more content than anybody can conceivably consume. You know, our ability to consume content has not gone up, and it never will, although I suppose we're a little more addicted to our devices now. But the content that's being created by brands and publishers obviously is outrageously high. Mark Schaefer gave that a term called content shock about 5 years ago, and that's stuck. And so if you blog, you're not necessarily going to enjoy great results. Now, of course, it's not just about creating quality content, but there was a time when people did succeed largely because they were sort of the pioneers of creating useful content in their field. Today, you have to understand social media, which is obviously the topic of your program and many of its episodes. You have to understand search engine optimizations, such that the tool people use, largely Google, to find information helps surface your content. You have to understand content promotion, and that brings us back to advertising, largely digital advertising. And so it's a complicated web we weave, if you will, to get success in content marketing, especially if you started now or in recent years, because you're not the pioneer in your industry. Many brands have beat you to it. I often have a conversation in the realm of content marketing that includes your last question about lead magnets. Lead magnets can be a lot of things. You certainly can go to some posts on my website and get the skinny on them. I'll try to rattle off a few. The one that I talk about the most is ebooks. But any sort of downloadable guide, today you see discounts, coupons, assessments, free consultations, sometimes infographics, videos, miniature courses, email subscriptions, memberships. These are content assets that are gated, meaning I need your email address before I'm going to give them to you. So you give me your email address, you're giving me permission to market to you. So that's why we have a conversation about lead magnets. And I find, in terms of content creation, perhaps this is the subjective point of view of a decade long writer, I find that ebooks of any length, perhaps as small as 4 pages or as lengthy as 100, and mostly the ones I produce are somewhere in between, like 20 to 40 pages, kill a lot of birds with one stone. That's why I get so excited about talking about lead magnets. One is, like I just said, they're protected by forms, and so they are a lead producer. That's why they're called lead magnets. They allow you to build your email list. Subsequently, you're going to market to that person who gave you permission to do so. They also help create authority in your business, in your niche or your field. You're going to lay an extensive amount of information, probably more so than you would in a single blog post or article about a topic. You're going to dig deep. And on top of all that, you have the creation, the formation or the foundation of something that builds leads for your company, builds your email database, and it positions you as an authority. You also have a larger asset that's easily divisible, and that's where the conversation becomes about repurposability, which comes up and talks about content all the time. If I wrote you a 40-page book and it had 8 chapters, that could conceivably be 8 very nicely distinguishable blog posts. It could be 80 to 8,000 social media updates. It could, you could extract infographics from it. You could base a webinar on it or a slide deck, and you could turn it into a course. And so, the options are many. So yeah, I'll finally shut up now, but lead magnets are a great deal. A lot of times people come to me just having started off, like they're building a website or fixing their website, for modern times. And they want to talk about blogging. And I say, I'm not going to talk you out of it, but there's nothing on your website that asks for my email address. So maybe perhaps first we should talk about doing a lead magnet for you.
And I noticed we had a lot of success as well when we actually created, because like that, I was doing a lot of blogging for Compass and whatever, and we were pushing out content, and it was good, and it was getting traction. But when we decided then, because when we would have talk to our clients, or we talk to the people that we would train, and they're always asking about social media tools, and I says, okay, well, maybe let's just create, because you had people that were coming on that were saying to me, oh, what's the best tools to use for Twitter? What's the best tools to use for creating graphics, whatever it may. So I just says, look, it's probably easier for me to put an ebook together. And like that, when I did put the ebook together and put it up on the website, it just exploded. And I went, hold on here, now this has a lot of value for that. And like, as you say, it's remarketing it, it's taking pieces out of it. Like I've often done, webinars with that and just talked about one particular tool. Like there's over 50 tools in this one particular tools ebook. So like there's 50 webinars alone already for it, so that's a great thing about it,
Yeah, well, yeah, I think when you go into them strategically, I like if they're chapterized one way or another, and a list of 50 resources that are tools or books or courses or whatever certainly is an easy to understand way of chapterizing something. Then indeed, that's how many separate pieces you can create. And when you get right down to it, your program, this program's called the Social Media Talks podcast, right? So what do you talk about on social media? You might be there, for a personal reason to talk about your family and your travels and your feelings and so forth. But when you're a brand, you talk about, the problems that you solve and the things that you do and the customers that you serve and the knowledge that you dispense. And so, that's what makes social media go around. So you need content marketing. And I say, I have a post in which I'm, sort of reiterating the plea I just made for why you should consider lead magnets if you don't have them, particularly ebooks, in that it says, if you're on a low budget, think big. So I don't mean it to be ironic, but if you have a $4,000 budget and you create something awesome, you're going to get way more than what the initial investment that might come with some sticker shock led you to believe it was going to be worth, as opposed to, writing a blog post, maybe 52 times a year if you're doing it weekly, spending way more and perhaps getting less.
I would agree totally with you on that. Is it can be very time consuming, whereas if you're actually putting your energies into something that is of value, that you can actually, really, it can be marketing. And you can, as you say, for getting that lead marketing, building your email list that you can remarket to these people, because if they're interested in what you're writing about, they're going to come back and they're going to want more. So it's a win-win situation. I think it's finding your niche. It's finding what it is that your business can help people with, because I think we've gone to a stage where it's changed the whole idea of digital marketing and stuff like that, where people were before, as you said, we would be pushing content out all the time, whereas now the consumer is now is saying, no, well, what are you going to give me that's of value to me and not to the general public? So I suppose we have to look at that side of it as well. With regards to, as you say, lead magnets, it's a huge opportunity that people should be, I think, availing of.
I read somewhere in something the other day, or it was this week, I think it said, simply put, content marketing is the new advertising. And it made me think, is it? I don't know that I'm entirely comfortable with that, but maybe it is. It's how you reach people, and there's probably more brands that have, that reach out for help with content marketing now than they do for advertising, right? More digital agencies are probably in the habit of selling content and creating content than ads. I come from the ad agency world, like I told you, back in the 80s and 90s, and boy, I can't even remember the last time I did a print ad. I will if you want me to. I love print advertising, and I'm good at it, but the demand is not really there.
I know, yeah. Well, look, I think, I've read posts before where you, as you say, they've said this, and I don't know. I'm sort of on the fence of it. I don't know whether, yes, it is the new way of advertising, or it is the new, it's the next generation. But I think at the end of the day, people will always come back to your content, and they will like you because of what you do, as opposed to, what's being pushed right in front of them.
Yeah, and the argument can't be minimized now that we are all researchers. Once upon a time, we might have, set aside the research for only big, expensive decision, houses and cars and electronics and colleges and, pets and things we're going to have to, pay a lot for or live with for a long time. Now we research everything, right now we have moms sitting in the parking lot of their minivans waiting for their first grader to get out, and, somebody told her to buy a certain kind of sunscreen or Band-Aids, and, she's on her phone researching that, right? I call that marketing in the carefully considered age. And so everybody's carefully considering everything. And so the point I want to make is that ultimately you're going to buy from, if it's a brand that supplied you the content, somebody that you believe to know what they're talking about, an authority in their niche, right? Like you mentioned before we went on recording today that you had recently heard me talking about my latest book, The Road to Recognition, which is a personal branding book. Well, the fact that I wrote The Road to Recognition, almost a 300-page book about personal branding, probably in your mind already makes me a personal branding expert even before you buy it or read it.
Yeah. I say, yeah, you would. I know what you're saying. Yeah. Before I've even opened the book, I'm already thinking, oh, well, this guy knows all about personal branding. He's wrote a book about it,
Right. So I think that same benefit comes from ebooks, which leads back to our talk about lead magnets, but also blogs too, courses, right? If you go, oh, Alan taught a 4-hour course on this topic, it must be that Alan knows what he's talking about on that topic, and if there are related products, I should consider him when it comes time to buy.
Like, I would be honest here, like there's a lot of people that would say to me, oh, if you want to know more about LinkedIn, talk to Alan. And that's and the reason why they say that is because I love LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I find it is a great platform, and I'm always talking about it because there's so much opportunity there, and it's where I can see a lot of my business will come from. But people now start to say, oh, well, look, if you want to know more about LinkedIn, talk to Alan. And I go, yeah, okay, well, you can talk to me, but and since then now I've had to sort of gen up on it and sort of make sure I do know what I'm talking about when people do come to me.
Be careful of what you create content about. Somebody might ask you about it.
Yeah, it's happened before. Believe me, it's happened before. But look, that's what it is. And, at the end of the day as well, I think a lot of people will admire honesty. If you turn around and you actually say to them, well, look, I don't know offhand, but I will find out and I will come back to you. And in a sense, that is remarketing. It's marketing back to them. It's going back to them, having that conversation. I think it becomes down to this know, like, and trust factor as well, which is a huge part of, I think, what everyone should be doing in business.
Oh yeah, there's that honesty thing. People, I suppose, have come to hold that in higher regard, and that's probably a difference between the age of advertising, the age of marketing, and perhaps that's a danger in saying, content marketing is the new advertising, because we certainly don't want it to become overly biased and hard sell. But authenticity comes through from what you say on camera and what you say on your podcasts and what you write. And so I think it's not that hard for a cynical consumer to see through it. And the road to recognition, the book I wrote about personal branding, is an A to Z guide. And so the first chapter, A, is for authenticity. And so it seems like a good place to start. So I'm glad we sort of got into that today. But people make the mistake. You mentioned that, they call you on things that you may or may not be an expert on if you've created content about it. People are a little too fast to pull the trigger on that, like they're skimmers. Like I wrote a post about a great brand. They make dog poop bags, and so you would think, like, That's going to be a rough product to do content marketing about, but it's not. They do some of the best content in the world. They're called Earth Rated, or they do some of the best content in the world for dog lovers, because they create content and contests and all kinds of social media about all things dogs, and people are very emotional about their dogs. And so I wrote more than one occasion using their examples, and I heard from people that wanted to write for me or wanted me to write for them because they thought I was a dog expert.
And are you?
I am expert in one dog. His name's Rio. He's a little miniature poodle. I love dogs. I think you could probably get advice about training and raising them from somebody that knows a lot more than me.
But it is, yeah. Now I see your point. All right, I love that. Yeah, but we're just going to call you Barry the dog expert now.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn's a good example. You could ask me questions about LinkedIn. I'm like kind of an expert. I have some popular posts about it, but it's not as ridiculous. It's related to what I do. It's it's a digital marketing platform and recruiting and so forth, of course. But it's the dog example is a more extreme and funnier one.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. It's I think as well as that, as you say, people are very quick to pull the trigger, and they're very quick to say, oh, well, you said you wrote an article on that and you know about that. And I said, no, hold on, I wrote one article on it. I gave my opinion on it. But now you all of a sudden you're thinking that the go-to man for this,
I get pleased from people that are want to be guest bloggers on my blog, Feldman Creative's blog, and sometimes they do their homework and sometimes they don't, and sometimes I'm not even sure they're human. The one that stands out in my memory, I almost never respond to these because they're so poorly written and researched. But they usually start off by telling you what a great post you just wrote or whatever it is that they plucked out of your blog. It could actually have been a robot. And this one was like, I have because your blog is so good about travel photography, I have the perfect blog post for you. And I was scratching my head going, I don't write about travel. I never have. And I don't write about photography, and I never have. So where'd you get that from? Probably those words appear somewhere on my website.
Yeah. Just put in a keyword, and then suddenly, oh look, it's Barry Feldman.
Yeah, the perfect outlet for travel photography. It doesn't make any sense. So if there's a lesson here, we're just sort of riffing here on content marketing irresponsibility. But if there's a lesson here when you're reaching out for guest blogging opportunities, is do your homework. Speak to that editor or owner like you actually did read their content.
It is, yeah, and that's the key. Well, I suppose at the end of the day is knowing who you're actually you're going to be talking to. Like for instance, like when we're on the podcast, like I didn't just say, all right, Barry, how are you? I'm on the podcast. Like I went and I obviously had a look and I researched and I said, yeah, he'd be a very interesting guest to have on the podcast. And so there is a certain amount of research done there as on the back end of that as well. And I think that's but I think that's more common courtesy as well, if nothing else, that you know about the person before you actually go and start talking to them, and just be sitting there blind.
Oh yeah, all the best interview programs, and obviously most podcasts are interview programs, have take place from interviewers. In the case of television, probably interviewers and their staffs that have done their homework, right? So they ask you questions about something you just created or did, and that's what you're excited to talk about, and that's what the audience wants to hear. So I suppose you did indeed learn a bit about me, and I guess you've actually bought my book and heard me speak, and the only reason we're talking about dogs is because I brought it up. Yeah,
exactly. But speaking about this wonderful book, which I am so looking forward to actually sitting down, I will say to you, I'll be honest, I haven't read it yet, but I have it, and I'm going to sit down at the weekend and hopefully get stuck into it. And I know my look, if it's only like the blog post that you wrote, I probably won't be able to. The whole family won't see me for the weekend because I'll probably just read it straight through. It happened to me before.
The thing about, you can if you want. I'd certainly be flattered, and I have heard from people that said this is a great nonfiction book that was a page turner. On the other hand, there's 26 chapters in it, and each one is a letter, and so you could jump around. You can use it as a reference, and so if it impedes upon your weekend and your family time, I encourage you to put it down and get back to it later.
Well, yeah, yeah. You haven't seen my family. No, we won't go into that. No, I'm joking. Or if they listen back to this, that's it for me for the weekend anyway. But enough of that.
You're toast.
Yeah, I'm toast, exactly. The name of the book is The Road to Recognition, and it really is. It's a fantastic read. If you haven't, ladies and gentlemen, or anyone that's listening to this, if you haven't jumped on to Barry's website, he has some fantastic blogs. You'll find them all over LinkedIn. The amount of blogs on LinkedIn, there's some fantastic ones and real truthful. That's the thing that I like about the way you write. It's a huge. It's there's something very refreshing about. There's no holds barred. You say it as you see it, and I think if a lot of more people started doing that, it would be a lot more entertaining, as much as insightful as well.
Well, I'm certainly happy to hear you say that. I'll tell you a quick story, but I know you're trying to wrap it up. I got approached by this client who wasn't real forthcoming in what she wanted to pay me and what she wanted me to do, and so she got a lot of pushback from me. And ultimately, I was saying, no, I'm real busy, and it's not a good time to take on you as an accountant. She wouldn't take no for an answer, and she kept coming back. Eventually, she did hire me. She succeeded with a lot of persistence and a bit of flattery, and we got into a conversation about why she was so persistent and not moved on to the next writer. And she talked about how she liked my style, and I said, "What's my style?" And she said, "You're frank."
yeah, but it is
one word. Yeah, one word. Someday I'm gonna write a blog post that says, "I'm frank."
Yeah, because and I could see that. Actually, I could see that as plain as day there, because but there is something about refreshing about like the way you talk. It's just. There's no holds barred where people. I suppose it's going against the establishment sometimes, even to say, why are you on social media if you're not going to use it right? And it's Anyway, you look. Well,
I mean, there's a war zone going on in content marketing, which is where we started a half hour ago, and I like to think that it's not that hard if you're an expert to espouse your expertise, but it's also not that hard for somebody else to just copy that. They can't copy your personality. They can't take away your fingerprint, your voice, your tone. So I think that element of humanity that is you. I'm not saying it has to be, like me, like sarcastic or frank or funny or whatever it is I try to be or are described as. But you be you, and it's going to appeal to some people. If you want an example of me trying to be funny and obviously sarcastic, check out my new post. I put it up yesterday. I don't know when your podcast is going to air, but it's one of my wilder posts. It's called The Sarcastic Guide to Publishing a Boring Blog.
Right, I will definitely have to have a look at that. Yes, I will definitely. Oh, I see it here. I'm just looking at it here. even the graphic, boring blog, boring.
Yeah, and I was worried about it. I wrote this a few weeks ago, and it took me a while to hit the publish button, which isn't like me, but it's a pretty tough story, and in it I'm pretty sarcastic. I put in a boring photo to satisfy those that like happy people gathered around computers, and I put in white space because people, you'll get the idea when you read it. I think if it was your first introduction to my writing, you would go, "Oh well, he's anything but boring."
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Barry, I could sit and talk to you for hours here about this subject, and but I do have a question that I ask my guests at the end of every show, and it's not related to anything about content marketing. It's basically what the question I ask is if you had the chance to invite someone for dinner, who would it be, whether it be past or present?
It's not an easy question, and I knew you warned me you were going to ask me that. And I came up with some finalists. Honorable mention to Steven Spielberg. I'm so interested in storytelling and filmmaking. But the winner is Bruce Springsteen.
The boss himself, huh?
The boss is the winner. I think he'd make for good company. I'm reading his book now. Talk about frank. He's like surprisingly vulgar, but he's really truthful, and obviously everybody always knows that. He's a storyteller, to the nth degree. And I've always been the biggest fan And he's not just about packaging content, obviously of the music variety, although he's he's now branching out into documentaries and biographies and so forth. He's on Broadway. He gets around. He was on the Tonys the other day, but he's the best at what he does, at least in this old guy's mind, of touching you emotionally, telling stories of the human condition. And I think, even as marketers, we do that. So he's also the best at performing. If you've been, I've been to thousands of concerts, and, the top 10 probably were all Bruce Springsteen, because of the way he delivers what he delivers with such a passion and integrity. And so, yeah, I think he'd make for a great dinner guest. And I imagine we'd probably knock down a few whiskeys.
Oh, I'd say so. Yeah, maybe bang out a few tunes as well while you're at it as well. You never know.
Yeah, maybe we'd jam too. I might be a little intimidated by jamming with the boss, but I am a musician, and so I'd probably say, let's play some Springsteen music.
Yeah, and he'd probably say, no, let's not. Let's play something else. Because I know I did hear a story about him when he was doing, I think he was doing one of the albums. It was when he done the Bluegrass album, that he actually went and he was thinking of writing the album himself. And when he was writing it, but he went to some town out in the back of Beyond, and there was a band that was playing in the local pub, and they were all musicians, and that's ended up he actually got them onto the album as well.
Yeah, that's called the Seeger Sessions.
That's right. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so he didn't write anything, I don't think. He recorded the music of Pete Seeger, and he put together this big band. It's even bigger than the E Street Band, and I read a lot about that too. And he said drinking was required.
Yeah,
they were pretty loose when they made that record.
But I think it loosens the, it gets the creative juices flowing. Maybe we don't know, but I don't want to go into it. But at the end of the day, he's a fantastic artist as well. I've seen him here when he was in Slane. It's sort of it's one of the big venues here in Ireland, and it was an open air concert. And I remember being blown away by him, saying he was amazing at that. Since then, he has played here in Dublin a couple of times, but I've just dates they've always clashed with something else I've been doing. So hopefully the next time I get to see him. But his daughter is always over here. She does the horse show jumping. And they do
really?
They do a big competition here in Dublin with that in the horse show. It's the RDS in Dublin, and he's always over when she's doing it, because they do dressage and stuff like that. So he's always over here. He spends a lot of time in Ireland at the moment, So
yeah.
So right if I bump into him, what I'll do is I'll tell him you're looking for him to have dinner with him. All right, simple as that. How about that? I can't say any fairer than that. Barry, how can people get in contact? I'm conscious now just that I want to get some details and get you to give a mention to your book and stuff like that. But how can people reach out to you if they want to get in contact with you?
Well, the center of my digital universe, and hopefully everybody's, is my website. And the URL is feldmancreative.com. It's as simple as that. And there you'll find a blog of hundreds and hundreds of posts. You'll find my writings scattered around the marketing blogosphere on some of the bigger publications that you probably already read. And I'm pretty avid about social, with Twitter and LinkedIn being my favorites. And in both cases, I'm at Feldman Creative. Simple as that. So thanks for asking that, Alan.
Brilliant stuff. And the name of the book is The Road to Recognition. If you haven't bought it yet, go out and buy it. It is well worth a read. I'm so looking forward to it. No, what I'm saying is I've read parts of it. I had a little dabble into it and just had a little look at, but I says I'm going to have to sit down and read it from cover to cover. But it's definitely one that I will recommend. I don't recommend a lot of books because there's so many out there. But yes, definitely was, and it's not just because you were on the podcast. Well, I suppose it is as well. But let's be honest here. If we're being frank, as you say.
And if we're book plugging, it's actually my middle book. A few years before, I wrote SEO Simplified for short attention spans, which is still mostly valid. SEO changes, but I think it's still a great starter course. And since I wrote a short electronic only book called Click-Ass Copywriting, with featuring 125 of my best copywriting tips. So there you go, Promo Central.
Promo Central. Well, I'll have to get the link off that, and we'll have to put it in the show notes if people want to go and purchase that piece of literary artistry, I suppose.
Yeah, whatever you call it. But yeah, they're all, on Amazon you create an author page. So if you go to Amazon and look me up, you'll find all 3 books. And,
fantastic.
In different forms. So get them. And it's not like I'm growing rich because of nonfiction books, but I'm happy when people read them if it helps them.
Well, that's it, exactly. And every day is a school day, as I always say, learning all the time. Barry, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thanks so much for coming on and talking to us, and we shall talk to you soon. We wish you every continued success in the future, and I'm sure you'll be back again. We'll have to do this again. It was good fun.
Should I be invited back, I will gladly accept. I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for having me, Alan.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, Barry. So my thanks to Barry for coming on the podcast today. And don't forget, if you do want to find out more information about Barry, you can log on to his website at Feldman Creative. You can also follow him on Twitter and also on LinkedIn, and you just search for Feldman Creative. And I would advise you, if you have got a chance over the weekend, to go out and buy that book, The Road to Recognition. Well worth a read. So as I said, my thanks to Barry for coming on and for sharing his insights and some fantastic tips there on content marketing. If you would like to listen to any of our previous podcasts, you can log on to our website at compassmedia.ie/podcasts. And all of our podcasts are also available on Mixcloud, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as well. And we would be delighted if you would leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, as we are always delighted to receive your feedback on any of our podcasts. You can also subscribe to the Social Media Talks podcast there as well, so you never miss an episode. If you would like the show notes for this episode or for any of our previous episodes, you can log on to compassmedia.ie/SM Talks show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, please do get in contact with us. All you have to do is email us at smtalks@compassmedia.ie, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. If you'd like to find out about the services that Compass Media provide, from social media marketing and training to podcast services, you can visit our website at compassmedia.ie. And if you'd like to connect with me on social, you can log on to Twitter and search for Compass Media. You can also find us on Facebook at compassmedia.ie. And if you want to connect directly with me on LinkedIn, log on and just search for Alan Hennessy. That's about our lot for this week. So on the next time we see you, have a great week. And as I always say, be social. So on the next time, bye-bye.
Social Media Talks podcast is a production from compassmedia.ie.